Harp on Sports, the Bar, podcast media, audio, and radio network. What do we have in store for you on this edition of The Bar? Gator Baseball bids adieu as they fall to Texas A&M in the College World Series. They finish in the Final Three, just like Gator Softball finished in the Final Three. Looking back on it, what is it? I can tell you what it is. It's the best season Gator Baseball's had since they won the national title back in 2017. They can point to this and say, oh, the regular season wasn't that great. They barely got in. So what? So what? Regular season in college baseball? Kind of really doesn't matter, right? It's what you define as important. So we're going to look at that. Also, a little Rickwood feels this thing. Fox Sports, Major League Baseball, what they do with their showcase games, I don't know if a sport does it better. Basketball kind of flirted with this collegiately, playing on aircraft carriers and doing things. Football really doesn't do it at all. Doesn't really need to, does it? But baseball gets it. Baseball gets a lot of flack, deservedly so. This is one of those areas where they deserve a lot of respect. So we'll look at that as well. And also, with the passing of Willie Mays, this discussion takes place, albeit a little somewhat morbid, but who's the greatest baseball player alive? It's kind of wonky because it's always going to be an active player, right? When I was a kid, it was always Joe DiMaggio, greatest living baseball player. And then it turned into Ted Williams. If you're going to play that game right now at Shohei Ohtani, it's not even close. But if you're going to tweak that a little bit, who's the greatest living legend in Major League Baseball? Ooh, interesting. So we'll look at that as well. Okay, Harp on Sports, the Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe. At Harp on Sports Twitter, at Harp on Sports Instagram, Harp on Sports Auditory Route, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast under the Harp on Sports, the Bar heading. Harp on Sports YouTube page, YouTube channel. Harp on Sports, the Facebook page. And of course, harponsports.com. All right, Gator Baseball bids adieu. What a great run. The last month, extremely impressive. Able to win a couple of games against Georgia, lose right away to Vandy in the SEC baseball tournament, and then go on this fantastic run in which they win multiple games in Omaha. It was amazing. This was a team, I think, at one point that was 15-16 in a 31-game stretch, something like that down the stretch. Even worse than that. It's like 13-18 in a 31-game stretch from March into April. 13-18. Still went on this run. Still did what they did. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar to what NC State did in college basketball this year, where they hit their stride, they go to the Final Four. Get hot at the right time. We've seen teams in baseball sneak in and do this. The Diamondbacks did it last year. You see this every now and then. And, you take a step back and you say, okay, well, what does it mean? And we always have this debate about regular season opposed to postseason. Who had the better year last year? Major League Baseball. Did the Braves and the Phillies, or did the Diamondbacks? We'd say the Diamondbacks because they went to the World Series. But the Braves and the Phillies had a better 162-game regular season. Well, what means more? Who had the better college basketball season? A 1 seed that gets knocked out before the Final Four, or NC State? Who has a better season? Interesting, right? Who had the better season? Regular season, the Baltimore Ravens. Chiefs had the better season. They won the Super Bowl. Just the way it works, man. So as I was looking at this and trying to take stock in this, here's what this postseason did. It cemented, from the Gator baseball perspective, it cemented Jack Caglione as the greatest Gator baseball player ever. I know Curtis Wilkerson, Matt Laporta. There's stories and guys over the years, and what Pete Alonso and. Great. It cements, when he hits his 75th home run and becomes the all-time Gator home run leader, and he's got 2 of the, top 6 home run seasons of all time in the SEC. Hey, look, he just checks the box. It's over. It was over before, but this is kind of like that, okay, it's over now. You could forget that debate now. It's done now. So, and also, he getting to go on that big stage, it goes back and it circles back to the point that stars drive consumption. He was the story in Omaha as a singular player. He's the guy you want to see hit. He's the guy you want to see play. So he gets to walk out of Gainesville. Going to be probably a top 5 draft pick. There's places that, Guardians probably not going to draft him, even though they're up there at the top. I mean, who else could get up there? I hope he doesn't end up with the A's. Oh my God. But where does he end up? Different ideas. Does he end up with the Rockies? I mean, there's all these teams up there that who knows where he ends up. But he ends up getting to wear that hat as the greatest Gator baseball player ever. That's what this means. And even though last year's team went to the national championship game, I think this team was more successful. That team getting to the finals and losing a best of 3, yeah, but they have 2 guys on that team that are already in the bigs. Waldrop's up with the Braves, and Wyatt Langford's up with the Rangers. That team from last year has 2 guys already in the bigs. That's remarkable. This year's team, this hodgepodge of underclassmen that got thrown together, no real strong stud on the mound. That team was led by 2 studs on the mound last year with Sproat and Waldrop. And all of a sudden, now you have this team that carries to win games throughout the course of the regular season, and boom, everything hits. They get solid pitching down the stretch, and they end up having a very successful year. A very successful year. And just come up short. Made it to the Final Four, made it to the semifinal series in the College World Series, just like softball makes it to the semifinal series, but it cements Jack Caglione. And also, the guy that this did the most for of all these guys is Kevin O'Sullivan. It's amazing how winning cures everything, isn't it? And what did they do? They ran the 2 best teams in the country for the last month have been who? Been A&M? A&M's been the best team in the country for about the last 3 months. But it's been A&M and Tennessee. Tennessee won the SEC baseball tournament. So, you look at it, and the 2 most talented, the 2 best teams are going to play each other, just like they did in college basketball with Purdue and UConn. College football, it was probably Texas and Michigan were the 2 best teams. We ended up getting, Washington and Michigan, but close enough. I just look at this and say, hey, man, what a great run. And also, you know what this did? This, to me, ends the whole, I'd rather have heart than talent. Give me a team with heart over talent, not me. The Gators' talent finally started to grow up when they got to game 50, 55, 60. That's what happened here. The talent started to gel and come into its own. They didn't win these games because of heart. They won this team because the talent finally started to align. I'll tell you a quick story about this in baseball. I was a bat boy for the Fort Wayne Wizards, and A-Rod was with the minor league Mariners team. Were they the Kane County Mariners? I can't remember which one they were. I was a bat boy. I was probably 12, 13 years old. And A-Rod was having a terrible day. He'd struck out. He hit into a double play. He made an error. It's terrible. Just looked awful. That dude came up in the 8th inning and hit a ball about 20 feet over the scoreboard. And it wasn't because of his heart. It's because talent finally figured it out. And when that talent needed to show up, it showed up in the 8th inning, and they won the game because of it. Then I remember him making me carry the balls out to the bus. So, look, I always wanted to be in the other team's clubhouse. I remember Johnny David. I was with the Royals because I always wanted to be in the other team's clubhouse because I wanted to meet these other stars. These guys coming up through the system. But I tell you what, talent finally figures it out. You can have all the heart you want. I'll take the talent. UConn won the national title, more talent. Michigan football, more talent. The Chiefs, more talent. Quarterback. Talent usually finds a way. A&M and Tennessee, more talent. That's why they won. But what happened with the Gators? It's good shit. When talent clicks, you're cooked. You can have all the heart in the world. If my talent clicks, good luck with your heart. So there you go. But the Gators been to do. What a great run. What an amazing year when it all goes down to it. Speaking of baseball, it's an all baseball show. Rickwood Field, baseball catches a lot of flack, and deservedly so, with some of the things that they do. The last few years, they've done a great job with things. The pitching clock, phenomenal. Phenomenal. The way it sped up the game, shaved a half hour off. It's been great. The whole rule about going to the bullpen and mound visits and batters have to face, or pitchers have to face a certain amount of batters, it's worked. You don't get credit for what you do right. Nobody looks back and goes, you know what? The challenge rule's been fantastic. It just kind of becomes part of the narrative and the lexicon, and it really doesn't change things. Nobody looks back and gives you credit for what you do right. They criticize you for what you do wrong. So Rob Manfred hasn't gotten credit, and he's messed up stuff. Baseball screwed up some stuff. Baseball gets this right. The Field of Dreams game 2-3 years ago got that right. Last year we had a little bit of a hole. They got this right. They nailed this. Tribute to the Negro Leagues, Willie Mays, everything that went into this, Josh Gibson. And it was funny listening to John Smoltz and the guys in the booth, because they're talking about how the next generation, high schoolers and younger, college guys and younger, have more appreciation for the Negro Leagues because the video games that they play have Negro Leagues players in them and they get to play with them. Well, that's probably kind of cool. It's where video games become, and look, I'm just as critical. I don't play video games. I don't have the time. I got a Pac-Man machine in the corner, old school Pac-Man arcade. But it's one of these things I just don't do a lot of. But that's kind of cool. There's where an example of, you got young people playing video games with throwback Negro League players, so they understand and appreciate them because they play them. I thought that's pretty neat. But anytime you can educate people and it can be unique and special, and baseball does this. Baseball does a great job of this. It got me thinking. I'm sitting here thinking, well, what other things can you do like this? There's really not much. All those parks are gone. I was lucky enough to grow up in Indy. And when I grew up in Indiana, Busch Stadium's where they filmed 8 Men Out. That's gone now. It's an apartment complex. Well, the field is still kind of there, but the apartments are built around it, but it's not the same. That's where Hank Aaron actually played, Indianapolis Clowns, right? So, you go back through and look at the tribute to the Negro Leagues, Bosse Field in Evansville. Evansville Otters still play there. It's where they filmed League of Their Own. But I don't know how you could integrate that into base. You know what I mean? Baseball has this ability to go play one game somewhere and move on. Football, it's such a you only get 16, 17, you only get 8 home games a year. So giving up a game like that would be rough. And how much money you would lose. Baseball can do it with a one-off. Check. It's a little bit harder for football. A little bit harder. Just because of the amount of games that you play. But I was sitting here looking at things that go, baseball has, I was trying to think of some other cool things baseball could do, and you need a big amount of land to do it. I always thought there's not enough room on the south lawn of the White House or next to the Washington Monument. You could play a football game out there, but then again, football teams aren't going to go there and play. I think it'd be really cool here in a couple of years for the 250th birthday of America to play a baseball game in Washington next to the Washington Monument, something like that. But get the seats out there and you set it up. The portable lights, I don't know how you'd pull it off. But baseball does a great job of unique events. They do. I just think about old school stadiums that are no longer here that would have been really cool for something like this. Like the the Rock Pile in Buffalo where they filmed The Natural. How cool would that be right now? That'd be pretty neat, wouldn't it? And, they're just, some of the old school stadiums have just torn down. Grayson Stadium in Savannah is still there, but I don't know what angle you're going to play with that. Babe Ruth played there, I don't know what angle you take with that. I was thinking around, and these always pop up, right? When anytime something like this happens, football does a good job. And they haven't done it for a while. When Tennessee played Virginia Tech at Bristol Motor Speedway, that was cool. And then everybody starts coming to their ideas like, well, we do a football game in Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Man, that track is those super speedways are way too big. Just because they only go 20 rows deep, 25 rows deep all the way around, but it's 2.5 miles all the way around. You couldn't put a football field in the middle of that thing. You'd have to put it where the track is. Daytona could, but I don't I don't know what the nostalgia feel on that is. And the football ones, you could do like, oh, you could play a football game where Varsity Blues was filmed, or you could play a football game where The Waterboy was filmed. Waterboy's filmed right down the road here. But I just don't know what football, maybe the Mean Machine, but I don't know if that's in California, right? That's a college. I don't know if that's going to tap into, but again, what NFL team, we're going to give up the gate to go here and play in front of 5,000 fans? I don't know how that would work. Don't know if it would work. Basketball, I still say you could get away with an NBA game at Rucker Park, in New York. You could get away with that. You really could. That's the one that you could get away with. Now, how many people are going to watch it? I don't know. I don't know how it'd have to be a preseason game. I think that would be really cool. If you had an old school throwback, New York Knicks versus Boston Celtics, or New York Knicks versus LA Lakers at Rucker Park in New York, I think that would be awesome. Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indy, Butler plays there. Hoosiers and that whole vibe. Or then you have the gym where they filmed Hoosiers, the Knightstown. But the problem with that is that's a high school regulation gym. It's small. You couldn't play a major game there. So see, that's just basketball. It would be a little bit easier to do. But the thing is, Rucker Park to me would, hey, NBA, listen, play a game at Rucker Park. That's what you could do. It is. I don't hockey. Hockey nails it with outdoor games at baseball parks, but I'd love to see a pond game. How great would it be to see a hockey game out on a pond, like the whole movie Mystery Alaska? Yeah, that'd be cool. So, but I give credit where credit's due. Baseball nails this. Baseball does this better than every other sport. And baseball can do this because it's isolated one game. Baseball's got the best all-star game because it's the only game that actually mirrors a real game. Actually, Major League Baseball All-Star Game mirrors a postseason game, how quick the hook is on the starter and how much you go to relievers. Major League Baseball's All-Star Game mirrors a Major League Baseball postseason game. Every other one's kind of eh. Well, Pro Bowl doesn't even exist anymore. So there's that. And again, I look around and I like that longest yard. I don't know where else you could do things. But again, Rucker Park would work in the NBA, and there's some other options out there. You could play a football game where the Washington Monument is. It's wide enough, but who's going to give up that gate? Food for thought. I want to wrap with this. And, with Willie Mays dying, I got to go a couple years ago when I went out to New York for Army Navy. I went to where the Polo Grounds used to be. And that's it's sad. It breaks your heart because you look down Coogan's Bluff. You're like, oh man, that's where it was. This is so cool. And you go down and see the plaque and kind of put yourself in a position where Willie caught the ball. It's like, oh man. And then I went to Ebbets Field later that day, Jackie Robinson. It was just that nostalgic feeling. It's like, man, it's a shame that these things are gone. But it also makes you fond of those things. And this has just been one of those things, and I'm a baseball guy, so I always enjoyed the conversation and the reflections of the past. Don't live in the past, but look back there. You can learn things from the past. Learn things from your grandparents, veterans. There's a certain amount of knowledge that comes with that. Respect. And I always enjoyed the discussion of who's the greatest living baseball player. Now, somebody wants to get cute with that and say, well, it's obviously got to be somebody currently active. It's like I had that discussion with somebody the other day. Who's the greatest living baseball player of all time? I said, when I was a kid, it was Joe DiMaggio, and then it became Ted Williams, and then it became Hank Aaron, then Willie Mays, and now who is it? It's like, well, it's Mike Trout. I'm like, oh, those guys, Willie Mays, 93 years old. Trout's better than him. I'm like, all right, good. Okay, you want to have that game? Fine. Who's the greatest living legend? Who's baseball's greatest living legend? Who is it? And, I talk about this over my 4 decades on this planet, how you could always debate Stan Musial and you could always debate, good gracious, Hank and Willie Mays, and it's a fascinating debate. Mickey Mantle. You could have this debate, and we've lost a lot of these guys. This time is undefeated, right? It starts taking things from you. And this debate now is interesting. because the steroid guys are in it. Is it Barry Bonds? Is that baseball's greatest living legend, Barry Bonds? No, he cheated. Okay. Who is it then? Pitcher? Greg Maddux? Well, no. Yeah, you would never say that, would you? Nolan Ryan? I didn't hit. All right. Well, he did when he's in the National League, but okay. Who? And it's funny because I wrote down a bunch of names here. Again, when I was a kid, it was DiMaggio. Then it went from DiMaggio to Williams, Williams to Aaron, Aaron to Willie Mays. If you don't do Barry Bonds because he cheated, okay. Who? Mike Schmidt? Pretty good one. Jeter, A-Rod. No. You know who it is? Should be. Nobody will say it, though. Nobody will bring it up. Shouldn't it be Cal Ripken Jr.? Cal's in his 60s. He broke Lou Gehrig's streak. But if it wasn't for the streak, Cal still hit over 400 home runs and had over 3,000 hits. If I tell you a shortstop's got 400 home runs and 3,000 hits, find me shortstops that do that. A-Rod did it, but then he moved to third base. Find me a shortstop out there other than Cal Ripken Jr. that's got over 400 home runs and over 3,000 hits. You remove the streak away from Cal, he's still a 403,000 guy. You guys don't exist. What, Ernie Banks? Ernie didn't get 3,000 hits. What shortstops out there have 400 home runs, 3,000 hits? Now you can say Cal moved to third base at the end. Oh, okay, I guess. Last 5-6 years he was at third. How about that? Shouldn't be Cal Ripken Jr.? This is going to be one of those things that for the first time, living legends, there's nobody in their 70s or 80s that are going to pop up. Oh, there's one guy that's up there that nobody will bring up. I wrote down, Barry Bonds, living legend. I mentioned Maddux, Mike Schmidt, Albert Pujols. And then you go down the pitchers, Randy Johnson. But someone's going to want somebody a position player. I've seen this debate. I've heard this debate since Willie passed away a couple days ago. You know who nobody says? Nobody says Pete Rose. Nobody does. How can the all-time hits leader not be in the Hall of Fame? Well, because he gambled on the game. Doesn't matter. Okay. Okie dokie. Nobody says Pete Rose. Oh, there's another one in here. If I had to rank them, I would go Cal Ripken Jr. 1. I'd go Barry Bonds 2. Greatest living legend in baseball. And number 3, I'd go Rickey Henderson. That dude clocked 1,500 stolen bases and is the all-time. He scored more runs. Think about this. Rickey Henderson. Make a case for Rickey above Cal. Rickey Henderson, more runs than any baseball player ever. Scored more runs than any other baseball player ever. Moneyball dream. More stolen bases than any baseball player ever. Moneyball nightmare. And you know what else Rickey did? Mostly off home runs of any baseball player ever. Rickey's got the most home runs. I'm talking Rickey third person. Most home runs, most stolen bases, most runs ever. Rickey got to be Rickey. So, greatest living legends. Cal, Rickey, Barry. Harp on Sports, the bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harp on Sports Twitter, at Harp on Sports Instagram, Harp on Sports, the auditory route, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Harp on Sports Facebook page, Harp on Sports YouTube channel, and of course, harponsports.com. Remember, stay clean, stay focused, stay strong. Frankenstein. Have fun with your friends.